Long before anyone used the word taco, people across Mesoamerica already relied on corn as a daily necessity. But raw corn did not easily become food. The breakthrough came through nixtamalization, a process that soaked and cooked corn in an alkaline solution, then washed it and ground it. This changed everything. The kernels softened, the dough held together, and the grain became far more nourishing. Corn stopped being just a crop. It became a dependable base for meals. From that treated corn came masa, and from masa came tortillas. They were simple, but they solved a practical problem: how to turn a harvest into something you could cook quickly, every day, in consistent portions. Tortillas spread because they worked, they traveled well, they cooked fast, and they turned small amounts of other foods into a full bite. One flat round of dough did more than feed people. It standardized the way food could be carried and eaten. Over time, tortillas became routine, and routine created a platform. With a tortilla in hand, eating did not require plates, knives, or long preparation. It required something to place on top and a way to fold and hold it. That habit mattered. It meant that when new fillings eventually appeared, there already existed a familiar, edible container ready for them. The future taco did not start with meat or toppings. It started with the everyday tortilla. After the conquest, food changed at the source. Europeans brought animals that had not existed in these kitchens before: pigs, cattle, and dairy animals. That meant new fats, new proteins, and new ways to cook. Meat could be stewed, roasted, or fried, then carried in pieces. A tortilla that once held plants and ground mixtures now held rich, salty animal flesh. The possibilities widened overnight. Alongside the meats came ingredients that pushed flavor in a different direction. Onions arrived and spread fast because they kept well and transformed broths, stews, and pan drippings. Cheese followed, and with it the idea that filling could melt, stretch, and bind. These additions did not replace older foods. They blended into them. A tortilla stayed familiar, but what it carried started tasting like a new world. This mixing changed more than taste. It changed what a wrapped tortilla could do. Meat made a bite heavier and more satisfying, especially when it was cooked ahead and reheated. Onion cut through the richness and made food last longer on the tongue. Cheese added comfort and value. Each ingredient pushed the tortilla toward a different role. Not just a daily staple, but a flexible carrier for bold, filling combinations. In colonial Mexico, daily life ran on labor. Mines demanded long shifts. Fields demanded constant movement. Cities demanded speed. People needed food that traveled, food that waited, food that filled the stomach without stopping the work. The tortilla solved that problem in one simple move. It turned a meal into something you carried in your hand. Fold it, wrap it, keep walking. That convenience changed what everyday eating looked like. At the edges of mines and along roads to the fields, cooks relied on what stayed affordable and reliable. Small cuts, scraps, and stewed meats stretched further than expensive roasts. Beans, chilies, onions, and bits of pork or beef gave strong flavor without much cost. Everything went onto the tortilla because plates slowed people down and spilled food. The meal became built for the job. Quick bite, back to work. In markets and crowded streets, that same logic scaled up. Sellers fed people who could not go home at midday and could not afford restaurant meals. A wrapped tortilla let a vendor serve fast and a customer eat while moving through the city. The food did not need a table or even a pause. It just needed a hand. In the colonial era, tacos settled into their first true role: working-class street fuel. In the 1800s, Mexico City grew fast, and the street had to feed it. More workers meant more people who needed food that moved with them and cost little. vendors filled that gap. They sold tortillas already wrapped around fillings, ready to eat without plates or paws. Over time, this way of eating stopped feeling like a workaround. It started feeling like the city's normal rhythm. As street vending expanded, tacos got tied to specific places and routines, outside workshops, near markets, around transit routes, wherever crowds formed. The same logic kept winning. A tortilla held everything together, and a vendor could serve quickly, repeatably, all day. That speed mattered. It turned the taco into a dependable system for feeding strangers. In a city built on movement, the taco fit the job. Then the word itself shifted. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, taco appeared more often in everyday talk and in print as a recognizable food name, not just a casual label. That mattered because names locked things in. Once people could say taco and be understood, the idea traveled faster than any single recipe. The taco became a known category of street food, not just a meal. In the early 1900s, tacos stopped feeling like one loose idea and started acting like many local ones. People traveled more, cities grew, and markets connected regions that once felt far apart. That contact did not blend everything together. It sharpened differences. A taco from one state came with expectations: what meat belonged, how it got cooked, what salsa matched it. These expectations became rules, and the rules became identity. In central Mexico, barbacoa held to slow, sealed cooking, often for weekends and gatherings, and it stayed tied to its own broths and salsas. In Jalisco, birria carried a different logic: spiced meat cooked until it turned rich and intense, served in ways that signaled the region immediately. In Michoacán, carnitas followed a strict craft: pork cooked in fat, cut by texture and cut, not just by name. The method mattered as much as the filling. Farther east, Yucatán defended cochinita pibil as its own signature: seasoned pork, cooked in a buried, enclosed style, finished with sharp accents that announced where it came from. And along the coasts, fish tacos formed rules of their own, built around freshness, quick cooking, and toppings that balanced heat and crunch. By the mid-century, ordering a taco did not just mean food, it meant choosing a place and accepting its terms. In the middle of the 20th century, a new wave of Lebanese immigrants arrived in Mexico and opened small restaurants and meat shops. They carried a specific street food method: shawarma, meat stacked in layers on a vertical spit and shaved off in thin slices. This was not just a new flavor. It was a new machine for feeding crowds quickly. Mexican cooks noticed the speed, the texture, and the show of it. The technique began to change the moment it met local habits. Lamb often gave way to pork, easier to find and closer to Mexican taste. Seasonings shifted too, blending Middle Eastern ideas of marination with Mexican chilies and achiote until the meat turned a deep red and cooked in its own dripping layers. The serving style changed as well. Instead of a pita, the shaved meat landed on tortillas. A taco form emerged. Out of that swap came tacos al pastor, a style that had no direct ancestor in Mexico before this contact. The vertical spit remained the engine, but the result felt fully local. Shaved pork, fast service, and a balance of smoke, spice, and sweetness that fit street eating perfectly. It spread because it solved a problem every vendor faced. Cook a lot of meat evenly, serve it fast, keep it consistent. A new icon locked into place. In the 20th century, Mexican migration into the United States increased, driven by jobs, rail lines, and later big farm labor demands. Families carried food habits with them because food traveled easier than anything else. Tortillas, salsas, and fillings followed into border towns, then into growing Mexican neighborhoods farther north. Tacos arrived as a solution to a familiar problem: how to feed people fast, cheap, and filling. But the taco did not land in a vacuum. American kitchens and supply chains pushed back with their own logic. Corn tortillas stayed, but ingredients shifted toward what stores stocked and customers expected. Ground beef replaced slow-cooked cuts. Yellow cheese stood in for fresh cheeses. Lettuce and tomatoes added crunch and color. Then one change locked in a new identity: the hard shell, built to be crisp, stable, and easy to hold. Once the taco became rigid and predictable, it fit the systems of mass service. Restaurants simplified steps, measured portions, and trained workers to assemble the same taco every time. Factories produced shells and seasoning mixes in huge batches, so speed no longer depended on a cook's hands. The taco started to act less like a local street food and more like a repeatable product. That trade-off fueled its spread. By the late 20th century, tacos moved from a local habit to a predictable product. Chains relied on consistency, not improvisation. They needed tacos that tasted the same in every location, every day, that pushed recipes toward fixed portion sizes, simplified fillings, and sauces that arrived pre-made. The taco stopped being something built by a cook's hand and started being something built by a system. Standardization demanded new decisions. Tortillas became uniform in size and shelf life, even if that meant changing texture. Seasonings became measured packets instead of family mixes. Meat often arrived cooked or partly cooked, designed for fast reheating and quick assembly. The goal stayed clear: speed, safety, and repeatable flavor. The trade-off stayed just as clear: regional quirks and small variations got flattened. Supermarkets completed the shift. Taco kits turned a street meal into a shopping list. Shells or tortillas, seasoning, salsa, shredded cheese, even suggested toppings. Packaging taught consumers what a taco was supposed to look like, and that picture traveled. Export markets followed the same template because it scaled easily. In many places, the first taco experience came from a box, and that box defined the standard. In the 2000s, tacos stopped feeling like a single standardized product and started looking like a moving target again. Taco trucks multiplied in American cities, partly because they cost less to open than restaurants and could follow lunch crowds. For many customers, that changed the first impression of what a taco could be: freshly made, regional, and personal. The truck window became a new front door into Mexican cooking. At the same time, more diners paid attention to regional Mexican styles, not just generic fillings. Menus started naming places and methods: Sonoran-style flour tortillas, Jalisco-style birria, Yucatan-style cochinita, Baja fish tacos. That detail carried a message. It suggested history, rules, and local pride. But it also created a new tension. Some people treated authentic like a fixed stamp, while others treated it like a living practice that changed with migration. Then, chef-driven taco menus pushed the argument further. Upscale kitchens used handmade tortillas and careful sourcing, but they also applied restaurant techniques and charged restaurant prices. Some cooks framed that as respect and elevation. Critics saw it as appropriation, especially when fame and profit flowed away from the communities that built the food. Innovation kept coming anyway because tacos worked as a format. In the 2010s, the taco became both a battleground and a bridge. Tacos no longer stayed put. They traveled, copied themselves, and changed shape without losing their basic promise: food held in a tortilla. In Mexico, that promise still played out on street corners, where choices stayed tied to place and habit. But outside Mexico, the same idea turned into a flexible template. One word started covering thousands of meals. Tacos functioned like a language, and people kept inventing new accents. In that new global role, the tortilla stopped acting like a strict rule and started acting like a tool. A cook in one city wrapped grilled meat and called it a taco. Another wrapped fried vegetables. Another filled it with seafood, noodles, or sauces borrowed from far away. The logic stayed simple, quick, handheld, built in layers. The result felt familiar even when the ingredients did not. That wide openness carried a cost. The more tacos became a shared global word, the harder it became to agree on what counted as real. Some diners wanted regional Mexican rules, and they treated the tortilla as tradition you respected. Others treated it as an invitation to experiment. Both sides spread fast because both worked. The contrast mattered. What began as a local staple ended as a worldwide food language.